Recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
I forget yours does that. Okay.
Does
No
no one
worries.
else do this?
Honestly, no, nobody else does that. It's just
Oh,
this
so
meeting is
weird.
being recorded. Yeah, I forget. Well,
Okay.
so far yet, you know what I mean? You might be the first one, and then you might have like the latest and greatest version. I don't know. But
AK for my web browser.
okay. We're gonna start doing this. This is the first episode in now. Naomi,
Yeah.
talk to us. Talk to us a little bit about before we jump into all these questions about your vision, because this episode's all about your vision. Talk to me and tell me a little bit about your past, your present. Why Lil Dente?
Ah, love this. Um, Past grew up in Pennsylvania, in a rural part, like out there, and both of my parents were physicians. Love living out there, but wanted to escape to a city the moment I was allowed to get out for college. And I think I've just been city hopping across the Northeast like ever since then. I went from Boston to New York to Philly, back to New York, yeah. And I just haven't left New York like since then. Um, just like love it out here, and I just love the Northeast. So don't see myself like anywhere else, which is why Connecticut kind of was like the right place for me to open up like Little Denti. And I'm super pumped about it.
Nice. So let's rewind even more. Have you always wanted to start your own place?
No, actually, like very much not so.
Mhm.
With that being said, I don't think I knew any better growing up. So a big reason why I went into dentistry in the first place was because of my parents. They're both physicians. Most of my extended family is also in healthcare. So the idea of patient care and just like taking care of someone has always just been a big part of my life growing up. But I just really, really hated the lifestyle of a physician. Um, and it just like wasn't for me. And it was in dentistry that I found like a really good balance between like life, personal life, being able to treat people the way that I want to treat them. And it's kind of why I really went down that avenue. My parents, though, owned their own practices and they loved it. And most of my extended family, who was all in healthcare, also owned their own practices and they loved it. And they would tell the stories about how they did XYZ. And that was always very motivating, but it was also a norm for me. I didn't really know healthcare in any other sort of way. But then when I went through dental school and training and all of that, that's when I discovered that's not really the norm. Um, and I think after going through all the schooling and training and everything that we have to do, I was so over the idea of having to own my own business. I wanted to almost be free and like experience life because school just took over for so many years.
Mhm.
And so the idea of owning a practice almost felt like I was settling and I was going to be stuck. So kind of took advantage of like my time after graduating and like would travel as much as possible, go do the things I just wasn't able to do, while I was in school. And then I think once I got that out of my system, I was like, okay, like now it's time to like, focus like a
Yeah.
little bit and how do I actually want to practice? Because I was doing so many different part-time associate jobs and I just wasn't I loved it. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it. I learned a lot. I loved the patients I treated, the coworkers I've met, and just like people along the way. But there was something like internally that I just felt that I was like really missing out on and being able to provide care in the way that like I personally wanted to provide care. And so kind of went back down to my roots and started to play with the idea of opening up a practice. It did take me though, like almost a year to really like commit to the idea. I wanted to make sure that I 100% was going to go into it. And when I dipped my toes into it, when I found the right place, it was just like, go ahead, we're going to go forward with it. And looking back on it, I don't regret the journey of getting here.
And you're where at right now?
Currently, I'm living in Brooklyn, but I'm opening up my practice in Connecticut. And
But
I know for like anyone who's not in the Northeast, like that just sounds like I'm like state hopping and like how do you even do that? But where I live is only like an hour commute from the office and I'm planning on eventually moving out to Connecticut. But
mhm.
in New York City, like a commute like on a subway to like my jobs is already like 45 minutes. So it's really not that big of a difference.
So, but like right now, that's the location. Where are you at? I guess in the process of your startup.
We are 7 weeks from opening, and the build out should be done by the end of this month. So in a couple of weeks, which is like so wild. Think the build out, like really officially, has been going on since May.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
yeah, it's been a very, very long journey, like with so many delays and like all that stuff from like shipping, suppliers, like all of that fun stuff that comes with the build out. So
The
yeah.
process started when?
Oh gosh, I think really when I started looking and I started trying to find a location, it probably started September 2021, October 2021. So it's been going on for like a while.
Yeah. Man, it's been a
Yeah.
minute. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So rewind a little bit. You said you wanted to escape to a city back then. So you went city hopping. And New York was the one where you're like, this is it. This is like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think like in New York City, I mean, everyone talks about it, right? Like it has so much to offer and stuff. But
mhm.
growing up only 90 minutes from it, so many of my friends and family had like moved out there that I really got to explore it not as like a tourist initially. So it became a place that just felt like home. We would go there for like Broadway shows, like over the holidays and everything. And it was just always the dream to kind of like live out here. And then I didn't really have a choice when I got into residency out here. So I was kind of forced to live here. And once I was forced to do that, I just haven't like really looked back.
Yeah, you really enjoy it. I hear two things about the East Coast versus the West Coast. Kind of like in the East Coast, they're really mean, but they'll actually do things for you. Like, what the heck? You got a freaking flat tire. Go, what are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Let me do it for you. Right. And the West Coast is more like, I'm so sorry you got a flat tire, but they won't do anything. They just have like that type of empathy. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. That's
Everyone
good.
here
It's
has an attitude and they're like, God, I'll do it for you. Geez, like blah, 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 like complaining the entire time, but at least it gets done. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and whenever I go travel out like to California, I mean, people are so nice, and I'm like, oh wow, like people like this exist. But I'm like, okay, nothing's getting done. You guys are way too lax. Like, I need to hop on back onto the plane.
You guys are way too lax. No, I get you. Okay. And then you mentioned that you hated the lifestyle of
Mm,
a physician.
yeah.
How old were you when you realized that?
Oh, I was so young. So my parents came from India, and when they had to do that, my dad had to come first by himself for 3 years before he had enough money to bring my mom across. And they
Oh,
made that decision that they would let him pursue his medical career first, put my mom's on the back end, and then when he finally like found a job, which was in the Poconos, that's when my mom would then move forward with her career. Um, so at that time, when my mom decided to pursue her career, I think I was like Montessori age, and she didn't really come back from her residency training, which was in a different state, until about like somewhere between like fifth to seventh grade. I forget the exact timeline. So it was like many years, like when I was younger. And I think it just affected me. I was the oldest child. I only had like my dad. I had a younger sister and a nanny. Um, and I would always see like the kids around me who had like the moms coming to brownies or going on the trips or their parents just being involved. But my dad couldn't even really be involved in my day-to-day life because he was so busy trying to like support all of us. And I don't blame him for that, but I just knew that that wasn't really what I wanted to do for my own future family. So,
mhm.
yeah. But
How
I
do you feel
admire
like?
everything that they do.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, he kind of had to, you know what I mean? But like at the same time, how do you feel like that's affected you now?
I think I really value my personal life and my work life. And I think that they're actually very married together. In pediatric dentistry, we have to give like so much. Like each kid, like we have to show up like with a smile on our face. And I think just dentists overall, like we can't show that we're having a crappy day. We have to like be there in the room, smile. We can't just like be sitting there like grumpy frowning. And it really does take a lot out of you. Um, but like when your personal life, you don't really have one, or you're giving too much to your work life and that balance isn't there. I think it can really, really affect like your mental health. And so I think having my own life and making sure I make that a priority, as well as also having like my career, I think that it's so important to like marry those two lives together. And I just don't think you can really do that so much as a physician, especially when it's like a hospital controlling your schedule.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I know, like, you're right. You do have to kind of like marry them. But as far as like you kind of live that lifestyle, like for example, we've documented a lot of people. We've seen a lot of people who have mom guilt, right? Where it's
Mm,
kind of like, man, like you start your practice, but you're also raising your child, and they're maybe like 1 year old or not even one, and then it's you know what I'm talking about? Like it's growing, 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 growing.
yeah,
But you're never there, kind of, or maybe you feel like you're never there.
yeah,
Is that how you felt?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I was that kid, right?
Hmm.
Where my parents had to put their career first. I don't think I cared so much if like they weren't there at home, but I like knew that they were physically going to be coming home at some point. But my mom was like in a whole different state. I saw her once every few months, like for a
Oh.
weekend. So it was just like a whole different ball game compared to like maybe someone who's like mom is building out their own personal office. Because when my mom did come back from residency, she was also a businesswoman. She started her own practice from scratch. She wasn't associated with the hospital. And I saw the sacrifices that she had to make on that front, but she still, came home. She still like was a part of our lives like on the day to day. And it might not have been like that same, you know, the mom that might be like there 24/7, but she was still there. And I think just having that stark difference for me personally, I appreciated the fact that she was just like there for dinners and like weekends and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Looking at it now, though, what I guess not negative, but like, where do you feel like maybe it's a little bit on the bad side or not so good side, the effects of that, if any?
You mean like what I went through,
Hmm.
like when I was younger?
Compared to like now, like I've grown up and this is how I see things because of that. If you
I
look back.
I think like back when I was a kid, I was so I don't want to use the word angry. I think that's a little bit aggressive, but I wasn't happy.
Hmm.
Um, but I think now that I'm in this position, and I personally don't have kids right now, I can't even imagine making all these sacrifices, also knowing I had like younger ones that I also had to that were it was going to affect. So I think I have a whole new level of respect for what my parents had decided to do, and it probably was not an easy decision on them. But
Yeah.
I am also grateful that right now I'm in a position that I don't have to be thinking about someone else and I can kind of make moves right now that are going to be good for me and like hopefully like future lives that are involved. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's good. So then, fast forward a little bit more. You said your parents own their own practice,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
How was that as like a child? Were you ever like, oh man, we're this is cool. We have our own place or anything, or no? You were just kind of
Well, it
whatever
was
it is.
actually a really interesting I don't think this is the norm by any means, but my mom's a pediatrician in internal care. My dad's a pulmonologist in critical care. My mom was full time in her office, and my dad was like full time also, but he was also working at the hospital. So, everything was just like kind of chaotic for him. However, they shared the same office space. So, like, they had the same like front desk area, they had the same lunchroom, they had like their own exam rooms, but their offices were like in the exact same physical space. So it was just like an interesting dynamic
Hmm.
to like kind of grow up in. Like when I was going to see mom at work, I was also going to see dad at work. But it was kind of cool. But with that being said, I would have to like go to their office to do like little mundane tasks to get like my allowances. So back then we didn't have like, electronic records. So you're like turning that wheel to like put those files in and
Yeah.
like all this stuff. Um, but my mom, I think, really had a big influence on me loving to work with kids because she was a pediatrician. And I think I was just exposed to it at such a young age. And they were always like so much fun versus like my dad's patients who were like older, geriatric. And I was like, oh, like not into this. I'm more into the kids.
Is
So,
that why you think maybe you went into pediatrics? That's
yeah.
exactly why.
I don't think it's the full reason, but I think it's 100% why I was very, very open to it. When I went into dental school and like I didn't really want to go into it like biased. I was like, who knows? Maybe I'll like root canals. Definitely didn't, but like, you never know.
Yeah.
I just naturally gravitated more towards the kids. And I definitely give that to like credit to my mom. I think I was just like very, very comfortable in that environment. So props to mom.
Props to did do you feel like when you're working with children, you're more like on the parents where you're like, I have sympathy for the parents, empathy for the parents, or more for the child?
Child. I think the child. I think it's actually like very interesting, like in peds, because you're not just having one patient really in the back. You have the kid plus
Mhm.
their family there. So you're almost like not just dealing with the kid, trying to be empathetic with what they're going through and like, the scariness of everything that's new to them. But then you're also dealing with the parents who sometimes have guilt, who sometimes are like, what did I do? Why am I putting my child through this? So you're almost like having to have like two relationships going on in that room. But I think that I act out of empathy for the kid a lot more. And then I handle the parent like a little bit like later, because at the end of the day, it's about the experience for the kid, right? That's who I'm
Mhm.
there to like take care of, and that's who I enjoy talking to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's really good. That's interesting. Like, because I would feel like, oh my God, the parents looking at me. If this kid, if you don't shut up, they're gonna think I'm doing something wrong to you right now. You know what I mean? But it's interesting to take care of the kid first, because I would feel like the parents always like judging. You know what I mean? Looking at
Mm-hmm.
you, judging you.
100%. But I think like I think it's why like communication is like such an important thing. And why that cleaning or that recall appointment is also so important. I think the cleaning recall appointment is like the time that you have to like maybe connect with the kid really quickly and like get them excited for that next appointment, which you're going to be focusing on them with. But it's also the time to like really have those conversations with the parents while their kids like watching TV or like, not having anything like invasive going on. And so that when they come for that next appointment, they're a little not removed, but they're kind of like a little bit more comfortable and let you do what you have to do with the kid. So I think it's just a matter of like how you approach things. But I kind of like using the cleaning appointments to connect with the parents and then the op appointments to like connect with the kids.
Yeah. Interesting. Awesome. And then fast forward a little bit more, you were totally over owning your own business, right? Your own practice, and you traveled as much as possible. So, like,
Yes.
if you were to give me a timeline, like I traveled this many days or this many months, all in all together, how many was that?
I think I was trying to travel every 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, nine. Okay.
Yeah.
In the States or outside or anywhere?
Anywhere. Like I think it just sort of like mattered a little bit, but I was definitely trying to take more advantage of like the international trips.
Yeah.
Being on the East Coast, it's so easy to hop on over to like Europe and all that stuff. Or like even just fly down to like the islands in the Caribbeans and everything like that. So I just tried to take advantage of those times. Like there would be times that you could, I don't know, just hop into London for 48 hours if you really wanted to, and then just like come right back and it would be cheaper than a flight to
Yeah.
California.
That's true.
So it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was easier for me to do that. I just never, like when you're in dental school, you have tests. You can't just like go away. In
Mhm.
residency, you have, at least in my residency, you had to give your vacation days like a year in advance, which is just like wild. So I was just like, you know what? This is the first time I have control over my schedule. Worked hard for those like 3.5 weeks, and then like took a few days, but it kind of made work more enjoyable, always having something to look forward to.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah.
When you were traveling, I feel like once you travel, like you know what I mean, you're traveling, you're doing a lot, you start sparking more of your creative side, right? And you're like,
Yes.
okay, I'm getting an urge to kind of like not just create something, but you're starting to come up with ideas for what you want to create. When did that hit you?
I think it hit me probably one of my first international trips when I got into residency, which was 2017. It was Portugal. And I think I'll always come back to Portugal just because I think I just have like such a foundation there from like this moment that you're talking about to all my like future travels there.
Mhm.
Um, I think it was just the first time that like I saw a place and I was inspired. Normally, like at that point when I was like traveling, and even like travels like after that particular trip, I was always like, oh yeah, cool. I got to go see it. Like London, for example, like going there, just having a great time, thought it was beautiful, but I never felt like, oh yeah, like, oh my gosh, like I want to be able to recreate something. Whoa, I'm inspired by the architecture or like anything like that. I just had like a whole different experience when I entered Portugal. I think it was like the moment I stepped off and entered Lisbon, I was just like, what is this place? Like, I love the texture, I love the architecture. And I think it was the first time in a very long time that I was like, wait, I'm like curious to deep dive into something. You know,
Mhm.
I've always been into interior design, photography on the as like side things, like when I was going through like my training in school. But Portugal just forced me to like actually want to learn more about those like things a little bit more.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's nice. Were you
I'll never
ever,
forget it.
yeah, were you ever like in Portugal, you're like, I can live here. I can see myself
Oh,
living here.
100%. Like I Googled, can I become a dentist in Portugal? And the unfortunate answer is no.
Oh, you can't.
No, I have to go back through dental school. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing
Uh,
that.
you're like, no, I'm over that. Interesting.
I'm,
So then you started, you said you kind of started getting your creative side around that time. You have other things going on, right?
like
Business
currently,
wise. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I back in when was it 2019ish 2020 I kind of got the idea of like playing around with like oral care branding and all that stuff. I don't know what exactly like triggered the branding aspect of things, but I at that point I was getting more into like my own personal interior design style and all that stuff. And I just was like very bored by the bathroom. Like I was just struggling with it like so much. And in terms of like oral care, I was so over like the toothbrushes that were offered at that time.
Hmm.
Um, the plastic things, Quip, like I was just like, whatever. There
Hmm.
wasn't anything that like blended both like sustainability along with like good design, along with um, good oral care. A lot of like the oral care products, as like most dentists know, have been started by like PE companies. And so I was like, huh, I wonder if there's like a little, you know, space for something different. So I kind of like entered the world of like researching like how to create like a toothbrush that was like a system. Um, kind of like a Dyson in a way where you just keep changing like the brush heads for each part
Hmm.
of like your oral care, like the brush head plus the tongue scraper plus like a floss pick, like all of those sort of things. And it was really meant for fun. It was just like, this is like probably the most creative I've felt, and like very like I felt a spark in me that I hadn't felt in like a long time. And
Hmm.
it's where like Denti like was actually formed. And that once again, the word came from like Portugal. The textures, textiles, design all came like from Portugal influence. But it was like such a cool experience to kind of like go through that. Unfortunately though, COVID happened
Oh.
and all these like ideas of like who I was going to be manufacturing with, who I was going to try to like pitch this idea to try to get investors in. It was all just like lagged because of everything going on. And the problem also in oral care is that a lot of this is done abroad. Nothing is done really in the US. There's just like a few bristling sites like in the US. Most of it's done over in like Germany and China. So I had to pause that, but I never paused the branding and creative aspect of it. So I just kept it like exploring it, expanding it, like trying to learn like a little bit more about it. And that was also around the time, like later on that year, that I was like open to the idea of opening up an office. And that's when I blended Denti into Little Denti.
Okay. So Denti, the the brand, right?
Hmm.
Toothbrushes and everything like that.
Hmm.
Um, did that ever blow up or no? Or
It had a moment actually. I was like a little bit surprised. It picked up like a couple of like influencers. Like so we basically, because of the original idea not being able to pan out because of COVID, we switched on over to I don't know why I'm saying we, it's me. Um, um, switched on over to like a replaceable head bamboo toothbrush. And I played with the design, packaging, and all that stuff just to kind of like figure out that world, because that's just something like we would never get exposed to in dental school or anything like that in life. And some influencers like picked it up for like their wedding gift bags and like all that stuff, got a bunch of like orders through there. I also did like a toothbrush cleaning spray. I'm like a little bit type A about like, or maybe I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. Like when it comes to that stuff, like I just think it's nasty with the toothbrush like sitting in the bathroom next to a toilet, like stored away, like ugh. So I usually clean my toothbrush, had no idea other people didn't do it, created like really cool packaging for a toothbrush cleaning spray. And it just like had picked up. And then when I decided to move forward with Little Dente, I paused it because I do plan on bringing Dente into Little Dente.
No, yeah, that would be like, you know what I mean? The ultimate. That would be
Yeah,
awesome. You know what I mean?
yeah,
To kind of do that. Awesome.
yeah,
All right. So we kind of got the backstory of your whole, not just your vision, but like who you are, right? So like let's dive into the vision of Lil Dente. Is it
yeah.
Lil Dente or Lil
Yeah.
Dente?
I say Little Dente. I think like the moment I say chi, people are like, huh? So
Is it
Dente it is.
in, I guess it's Portuguese, right? Portugal,
Hmm.
Portuguese. Yeah. Portuguese,
Hmm.
is it Dente?
Yeah,
Lil
yeah,
Dente. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. I was watching the other day, Somebody Feed Phil. Have you ever seen that show
Yes.
on Netflix? Okay, Lisbon's on there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, okay. He's talking about, and he said the same thing where he's like, I could see myself living here. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, it must be amazing there.
Listen, anyone that I've brought over there, they have become like Portugal lovers. So just saying.
There you go. Okay, awesome. So the vision of Lil Dente. What is your
Yeah.
vision for your startup?
When I kind of went through the process, it was actually like a really big part of like why did I want to open up the practice? I didn't want to just open something up just for the sake of doing dentistry and like my own like rentable space. For me, it really came down to the experience that I wanted to offer. When I was in my associate jobs, me, coworkers, like everyone there was doing a stellar job with like the clinical side of things. Like no one was trying to like make money just for the sake of it. People were like very, very good about like what they were offering, and I 100% respected that. And I think that's just something that most pediatric dentist offices do try to do. However, I think the experience side of pediatric dentistry hasn't really been explored too much. And I think it's mostly about what interactions can I have with the patient from the moment that they enter the door and leave the practice that can make this feel like a safe, comfortable home for them and like their families. And that was the avenue I took with like Little Dente. So everything from like the moment that you enter, from the interactions that you have with the practice, even before you enter, the interactions you have after, all of that is meant to create like this safe, comfortable like home for you. And that was something I really, really wanted to create, almost like a new standard in pediatric dentistry.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you
Yeah.
wanted to call it Lil Dente.
Lil. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, at the end of the day, this is me, right? Like Naomi is behind like Little Dente, like what is Little Dente? And I wanted to like tell the community, like, hey, this is me. This is my backstory. Like my Portugal story is not probably going to be the pediatric dentist that's down the street story. So I want people to be able to get to know me and know why this like brand exists and like why I'm creating it and want them to come to me. So I thought it was important not to just to like do something with smiles in the name or do something like that. For me, like there's a reason I called it Denti, little
Yeah.
tooth.
I like it. It's super different. You know what I mean? Instead of
Yeah,
like my kids smile or something like that. But
yeah, exactly. The
I like
fact
it.
that like what is it like kids smile like with a Z like that's done like everywhere. I don't know. I How are you supposed to stand out if you're like a unique individual? Put that in the name, put that in the branding, put you into it, and I think like that alone is just going to start like unraveling like some really really cool ideas.
Yeah. How does, so that's the vision for your practice.
Hmm.
What about like if we look at the end product, how does your life and your personal life and your practice look? If you were to be like, this is exactly how I want it to look, how's it looking?
Oh man. I think like that finished vision is like always evolving. Like there's that short-term aspect, right? Like where
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, cool. Like I know I'm going to have like this many days open and it's going to be this sort of schedule or like this many ops. And so I have those like sort of short-term goals, but I think like in terms of like balancing me and the practice, I would love to be able to work maybe 3 days a week and then work on Little Denti 2 days a week. Like that ideally would be like what I would like love to do. Obviously, like hopefully I can make that happen. I would need to bring probably other people on board to do that.
Yeah.
But for me, having that balance would mean a lot because I think Little Denti at the end of the day is coming from me and like who I am. And if I'm not able to like give the time and the energy to make sure I'm like building it out, being creative, being innovative, like I don't know how Little Denti will ever make like those steps forward to finally get to that finished vision.
Okay. That's gonna be good then. Yeah. 3 days.
Yeah,
Do you plan to
goals,
see like,
goals.
yeah. Do you plan to see it like, I would love to have more than one location.
I've actually thought about this like quite a bit because, as you're going through like this process, everything is about like what's your 10-year goal, what's your 15-year goal, like 30-year goal, like with the practice. Um, I'm not sure. I genuinely am not sure. I think that I'm trying to build a brand. I'm I'm not trying to build like a mini DSO. I'm not like trying to do any of that, but the experience aspect of this is like really, really important to me. And like, everyone kind of getting the same experience. If I'm not able to do that in a different location and that would suffer, then I would not want to open up that second location,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
But if I'm able to replicate it, if I'm able to really offer just as good of a job, then I'm open to the idea of it.
Yeah. In like about 2 years, you'll know. Like a year or less, maybe. You'll be like, yeah, I want
Who
30,
knows?
you know?
Who knows?
Okay, make it happen.
We'll see.
Okay. So then, Naomi, how well do you so far, actually before you started this, how well did you think you handled struggles?
Ooh. um, oh man, that's like such a deep question. Well, okay, I think probably when I was a student, like college, master's, like dental school, all of that. I don't I think like things were constantly stressful that I never really got the time to really like figure out how to work through it. It was just constantly like, let me put out this fire, let me put out this fire. But I think one thing I really learned after graduating was patience. And I know that sounds like so silly, but everything I used to do was like very reactionary because I was just trying to put something out like immediately because that's just the life I was living at that time. But I've really trained myself to give myself at least 24 hours before making a decision. As long as it's not like super urgent that like, we have to decide like right now. But I think those 24 hours oftentimes like really helps me like confirm that I am 100% behind this decision. When before I would be like, in 1 hour I'd have the choice, and then 5 hours later I'll be like, crap, why did I do
I
that?
know, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like
So
at night, right? If you're like entering an email at night, you're like, what did I do that for?
exactly. I'm like, can I edit the email? Can I like take it back? But yeah, I actually like have started even like sending texts and emails to myself, just kind of like writing everything out and then like taking it back like a few hours later and be like, am I still feeling this? And then like adjusting and writing like accordingly. And I think just like it's really, really helped me like calm down a little bit. Like I can be like very hype. I can be very all of that. But I think it's important that I take those 24 hours to before I make any choices.
Yeah. Give me an example of that, of the text.
Let's
I was gonna
see.
say, read me your latest one, but
I
since
know,
you,
right? You want the
yeah,
juicy deets.
yeah, if you want, but like, give me an example of that.
Hmm. I think so, during the build out, I had a lot of landlord issues
Mm,
that were kind of very surprising. And it's very frustrating. I think like maybe other type A or dentists like really understand, but you try to like do all the legwork beforehand. You pay the lawyers, you do all this stuff. And so when a surprise kind of comes about and you're like, WTF, like we went through this like prior to this. Why is this now coming up? And oh my gosh, this is costing me a lot of money. Um, I I remember there was a particular instance that was going to cost me an additional like 10K to my build out. And I was like not happy. Like when I found out, I like immediately called my lawyer and was like, what is going on? We need to act like we got to show who's like boss and like all of that. And I remember I hung up that phone and I like sent like an email draft like to myself, like being like, hey, Mr. Landlord, blah, 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 like saying like how exactly like I felt.
you're Mr. Landlord. Yeah.
And I had to see a couple of patients. And then that was like about an hour or two afterwards. I went back to like my Mr. Landlord email and I was like, oh, okay. Like, Naomi, chill out. You sound like an absolute jerk. This is not going to get you anywhere. Um,
Hmm.
and I think just like having just even that little bit of time and not pressing send right away. Whew, thank God. I mean, listen, it still turned out to be a situation. It wasn't like because I took the time that the situation went away, but it was handled in a much better manner than I probably would have had I sent that email right in the moment.
Yeah. Man, that's really, really smart to do that. Yeah. And we'll discuss that. We'll talk about the additional real quick in like one sentence. What was the additional 10K for landlord?
Electric.
Electric. Okay. Okay. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that in the construction episode. But awesome. Awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So then in your vision, what type of patients do you want to have? Is it all fee for service or like what are you looking at?
Um,
PPO?
I'm starting off PPO. I think, unfortunately, insurance has been marketed in a way that it's good for the patient and stuff. And so I think it's initially the only way my name can really get in the community. And, like right now, especially with like jobs being such like turmoil, recession, all that stuff, I don't want to like lose out on patients just because of insurances. But my goal is to be fee for service while also offering like an in-house membership plan.
You've already built out your in-house membership plan or not?
Trying to. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out like what the right moves are with it, but it's definitely something I'm planning on offering within like a few months of opening.
Do you plan to go with the company or you want to make your own?
I think I want to make my own.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think it's that difficult to do it. I think, like you create the dummy codes, you figure out like, as long as you got like a system in place for it and you communicate that to your staff, like I don't think it should be that complicated.
Yeah.
So why should I have a third party take away extra money from me, which could be put back into the business?
Stop taking money away from me. No, okay, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. And then so how many operatories do you plan to have?
So I built out 3 open hygiene chairs and 3 hygiene rooms, but I'm going to say 2.5 ops because 2 of them are going to be like the typical sort of op rooms.
Mhm.
But the other one, I'm really wanting to do like a 3 and under room slash a frenectomy, lip tie, tongue tie sort of room.
So
Yeah.
you're is that like a thing you want to specialize in
I
mainly in your
think
practice?
I think it's like a very good thing for me and my specialty to learn. Also, like just in terms of my location, right across from me is like a pediatric therapy group that does myofunctional therapy.
Oh yeah.
Just having that relationship with them and being able to offer that service, I think is also really important. I've also personally been very curious about it. I wasn't trained a lot on it, so I just want to make sure I'm taking enough CE courses before I offer it. But I also love the idea of that room not just being for that. It would be like a room that's for the younger ones, like a baby room and all of that, just so like the kids have like a different space. So they're not so like freaked out by like, all this newness and craziness that's like in a typical like dental
Yeah.
area.
So you haven't had enough CE, like have you had any training in that or no? Like and if so, like what's where the one where you're like, this is where I'm gonna dive in deeper with this doctor.
So I've done like a lot of research and I've talked to like other dentists who have like done it and I figured out the course that I really want to do. Um, just like with COVID though, like I wasn't able to move forward with like any in-person courses. So signing up for like an in-person one while also taking like an online like CE course just to like try to get as much information as possible so I can figure out what my philosophy truly is and all of that.
What's the course that you want to take?
The American Laser Study Club, I think is like the one that I want to do in person. And then the other one is Dr. Baxter's. I think it's called Tongue Tie Academy.
Mm.
Yeah, I've heard like great things from like other pediatric dentists about it, and they're like always raving about it. So I'm planning on signing up the month before my build out just to kind of take my time with it.
Yeah. Nice. That's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting. And
Yeah.
then right now, if you can, as much as you can without like obviously we don't I mean if you have pictures that'd be awesome, but like what's the decoration and design look like?
Ooh, I love that question because that's like been such a big part of it. I how do I say? Fantastic.
Like I would hope so, but
Well, I really wanted to create like a place that I could call home, right? Like I'm going to be spending a lot of my time there. Um, but I also wanted it to be as relaxing as possible. Like I mentioned, like everything that I did from like design, patient interaction was like all based for the kids. Um, but obviously kids can be like a little bit chaotic. So I wanted to create as much of like a relaxed environment as I could. So I did a lot of calm neutrals, like as my base, like the walls are a particular cream color. I did chocolate brown like ceilings, but then I did like pops of color like from my branding for like the excitement. So like my door frames have pops of green like painted on the frame. The lights above my desk are like blue and orange. The texture is tile like on my front desk. I just felt like it was like a good way to commit to like a kid friendly design without going like theme or without going crazy and having to live in like Disneyland every day for like 10 plus years. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess
Okay.
like I just want it to be soft, soft and comfortable and colorful.
If you were to give us like a specific business or place, you're like, this is how I wanted the feel to look like, right? You know how some people are like, I want to look like Starbucks or like IKEA. I don't know.
You're gonna, oh God, you're gonna hate me for this answer, but like I didn't want to look like anyone else.
It's a good answer. That's a
That
good
was
answer.
like I love other brands, but like I'm trying to create my own. I think at the end of the day, I wanted to come back to the foundation, and it really came down to Portugal. Like once again, it's full of texture, it's full of color, but it's done in like a very balanced way, and that's like what I really wanted to blend. I wanted to blend like textures. I wanted to blend like the architecture, like if hopefully like I think I sent you a photo, but like
Mhm.
I have like an L-shaped full tile front desk. Like the lights that are above like that desk are like a cool stone color. The wooden floors, like all of it are different textures that then I can like pull out colors from. So I don't know. That's what I loved about Portugal was the texture. So I brought that into the space.
Gotcha. So inspiration, same thing. Portugal, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
motivated you,
Yeah.
the design. Awesome. That's really
Yeah.
good. Okay, so then right now at the beginning, how many people are going to be on your team?
Only one to start with. I'm gonna do a front desk girl who's also gonna help out like with assisting. She has like training in both areas. But I do think that it's going to be important probably within a month to start looking for an assistant. But initially, when the doors are opening, I'm only going to have one person.
Okay. 6 months from now,
Ooh.
what do you think or how? What would be best case scenario for production and collection for you?
6 months. Oh, geez. Oh my gosh. You know, I think I'm just going to speak like 12 months from like opening date. I
Yeah.
think it would be such goals. Like I would be so amazed at myself. Like if I was able to produce like 800 to a mil, like I would be like, whoa, like tap on the back. Like I'm pretty proud of like that. And then being able to collect like 95% of that. That would be like epic.
You gotta make that happen.
I know. But listen, like it could happen. You
Yeah.
never know. But I
Hmm.
think a big part of it is just like trying to get people in through the door. But like word of mouth is so big in peds. Like everyone wants their kid to be taken care of like a certain way, and people will do anything for their kids. So like once you're able to prove yourself, you'll be surprised by like what 6 months can kind of do. Like
Yeah.
once those recalls come, like people are like, oh, I told you, like I want you to see my son, or oh, I told my friend about you. Oh, like I heard about this. Like once your name is kind of like put out in the community, I think it can be kind of surprising the growth that can happen.
And at that period, let's just say you do reach like 800 to a mil. How much do you want to pay yourself?
I actually am very comfortable with my associate salary. So like if I can just keep that, I would be happy. Obviously, if I make more, great. But my goal is to put as much as I can back into the business, at least for the first like 12 months. So I am going to be working another associate job like while I'm doing all
Oh,
this. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There's no other way.
What's what's your associate salary?
mm, Probably between, I think it ranges, right? Between like 200, 250, like usually for working like a few days a week. I think
Are
it
you
just
speaking
depends
like
on
for
like,
you or are you speaking like it just in general?
I think in general,
Oh, I'm talking about
that's my
you.
age range. Oh, for me,
Oh,
I would
yeah.
probably say closer to 250-ish.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
heck yeah, I'd pay myself, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, I did this. Have you ever
Yeah. I
seen
would be
Snoop Dogg's
happy.
speech?
Huh?
Have you ever seen Snoop Dogg's speech where he's
No.
like, I want to thank myself for doing this. I want to thank so like same thing. Like
Wait, I've heard that. I had no idea it was Snoop Dogg.
yeah, Snoop Dogg, it's hilarious. But what was I gonna say? That's good. Interesting. What would
Yeah,
be your
but
ideal?
that salary comes out with like 4 days, right? Like four
Yeah.
to 5 days. So like that's where the struggle is like right now. So I'm gonna be having to work almost like 2 days a week at least just to like get the bills paid on my end for a little bit of time. But if I can make that in my office, I would be like tap in the back.
Yeah, you will. You will. Right
Passing.
now, what's your ideal overhead percentage in like those 12
Honestly,
months?
like probably 40%. Like I just think like, dentistry is so high on overhead, but if I can keep it 40%, the one good thing about peds is that it's repetitive in terms of like, the same types of procedures, the same types of like all that stuff. So I don't need like 20 crazy materials. I don't need like all the newest, latest technology all the time. But I'm just hoping like with the material costs and like everything kind of going up, I can keep it in the 40s.
Yeah,
But yeah.
maybe that's like something I think we have to kind of always look back on and keep an eye on, right? Because I can like
Yeah.
that can slip like super easy, you know?
It was so easy. It's like, I think right now, as I'm going through these last 7 weeks, like everything's like, oh, here's the internet bill. Oh, this is going to be an additional 35 a month. Oh, this is going to be this. This is going to be that. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, oh God, I have no idea what I'm signing off on. Like at this moment. So once that first like month comes along, I'm gonna be like, oh, just kidding. Gotta like nix this.
Yeah, just kidding. You're all making like, is the free trial over? Oh my God, I gotta cancel, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. No, I get you. Let's just say 12 months from now, you're hitting the numbers, overhead percentage is not that bad. Paying yourself, you decide to like take back a day, right? Or take back 2 days. You're working 4, maybe 3, in a couple years. What do you plan to do with those extra days?
I mean, honestly, be a CEO, right? Like, I don't think that you can just open up an office and give yourself half a day a week to be a CEO. Like if you want that practice, like build out, like consistently innovate, think of like new marketing strategies, think of like new ways to like offer better experiences for the patient. Like you have to give back into the business. And that unfortunately in our field comes in time. So if I can cut down on my clinical days and the office is doing well, I would love to be able to give myself that time to like build out the brand.
Okay, I like that. And if you can
Yeah.
think of one word that your practice brings you, what would it be?
Comfort.
Oh, comfort.
Yeah, 100% comfort.
Why?
I think because I'm really trusting what I'm creating. And when I walk into like my build out space like every week, that's genuinely what I feel. Like I just feel like at peace and at home. And I like internally just know I'm doing the right thing. It just feels like very safe and comfortable.
I mean, do you feel like maybe for a while you were missing comfort or lacked it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think when you're a part-time associate, especially like in a city like New York, it can just be so chaotic. And as an associate, you don't really have a lot of control. And I think it can affect the care that you give, it can affect the experience. And that's just, what you take on as an associate. But it was so important for me for the experience that I was creating to have that, not just for me, but for like my patients and staff. So it feels good to like know that I'm creating that and that's what I'm feeling when I'm entering.
Do you feel like you were like floating a lot and you're just like, I think like kind of like, oh, not ping pong, but like, or what is that thing? The pinball machine, right? Where it's kind of like you're just being, and you wanted, I guess, more like comfort and security kind of thing, right? Where you're
Yeah.
like, I, I have to make this on my own because you're kind
Hmm.
of creating your own type of comfort, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think in the city, um, or in with most people I talk to here, they all seem to say it's not very stable. Like you could just be let go for like no reason. You have to see what's in front of you, even if you don't agree with it. And it comes with a toll sometimes, and you just don't know like what the next day is going to be, what next month is going to be. And I think me opening up an office is giving me at least that front of that part. Like that part is going to be taken care of now.
Yeah. Do you feel like this has also came all the way back from when your parents were always out? Your mom was not there for like until the one weekend, right? Your dad was. Do you feel like you'd be like, where's comfort?
Possibly. I never really thought about it that way, but it could be. It could be like, you're always trying to feel stable. And I think taking away like Little Dente and all that stuff, one of the things I really struggled with, like after graduating residency, I didn't, I'm not married, I don't have kids. I could choose wherever I wanted to go. And it was the first time in my life that I was able to make that choice because school always dictated what my next step was and where I was going to be. I really struggled with the idea of stability after graduating because I just didn't know where home was. I was like, is it New York? It could be LA. It could be like somewhere rural, like for a little bit of time. Like I just didn't know what home really felt like because I didn't want to go back to Poconos. I just knew as much as I loved growing up there, that's by no means where I wanted to like live. Um, and so I think when I made the choice to open up Little Dente, it was almost making that decision of like, I decided on a home. This is it. And so it felt good to like kind of make that choice, but it's also why it took such a long time because I wanted to make sure that it was something I truly wanted to call home.
Yeah. It's almost like some people are like, dang, Naomi's traveling everywhere. She's doing all these things. And you feel like, oh man, like this is great. You're getting creative, all these things. But there's a part of you where you're like, I need a routine a little bit. Like, or I need a, I need a corner. I need a place of home. You know what I mean? Not like a mansion or anything, but like, you know what I mean? Just a, is that how you felt?
Yeah, I think so. I think looking back on it, I mean, I definitely wanted to enjoy life just because so many of my friends were doing that while we were in school and I was in residency and I wanted to catch up, I guess. Um, but I think you're absolutely spot on with like the routine not being there, that home not being there. And now it's being built out. So I'm happy.
Awesome. So then what struggles or bad habits are in your way right now that you feel you would need to remove if you wanted to reach out to your ultimate vision?
Ooh, um, I think it's I think it's about not needing to be in control or allowing myself to delegate tasks. You know, when, and I'm sure other startup owners can like attest to this, but you're really putting yourself in this process. And like, kind of like, as you know from my story, a lot of me is in every single part of this journey, from like the name, the branding, the decisions I'm making. And it becomes your baby. Like this vision is yours, and it's hard to let someone else take care of your baby. But I'm trying to really teach myself how to communicate my vision and how to communicate like the pillars of what Little Denti is so that someone else can take it and like it makes taking it off my hands like a little bit easier. But it is a struggle. Like even right now as I'm thinking about like the tasks of what my front desk girl's going to be doing, I'm like, ooh, like no, I'll enter the fee schedule for the insurances, and I'm like, no, Naomi, stop. Like someone else can do it. Like you can do one so you know how to do it yourself, but like let them take over. It's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can be a struggle, especially since it's yours. You know what I mean?
Oh,
You feel
totally,
like
totally.
you're the only one. What are the pillars of Lil Dente?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, hands down, like first things first, like comfort. I'll always use that word. Like that was a very, very important part of like the brand colors, the decisions, design process, everything. Um, Innovation, like for me, that comes, or creativity. I think it's about taking dentistry and twisting it a little bit, which I'll share like later on, but like my goals for like the social media and the marketing and like all that stuff. That was like really important to me, and it's a big part of me as well, just like as a person. So I'm excited to kind of bring that about in the office. Leadership, definitely. I think that's like a really important one, not just for myself, but for like my team. I want
Mhm.
people coming on board who also want to take those steps. And I also want to be able to be that in the community as well. So those are our top three ones.
I like that. I never heard of that. Twisting dentistry. This is gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. All
excited
right. So
to.
Naomi, one of the last questions is right now, what phase are you currently in?
2 weeks from ending my build out, most likely. The IT guys just came in. We're just waiting on like little touches here and there so we can get the inspector in. So we're not too far out from everything opening.
Oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. Stay calm. Okay. It's gonna be good. And then I know I said last question, but what help or questions do you have for the listeners? Maybe they can reach out to you and help you or anything like that, if you have any.
Ooh, I think I would love to hear how people created relationships with other local businesses. It's one thing to like, I know, reach out and like do all of that, like, the ground marketing and all of that. I get that. But
I was gonna say,
truly,
are you talking about ground marketing? Because no, just kidding.
I know I'm talking to the king himself, but
No,
meaning more so like, how did you form the relationships? Like, get to know people on like such a personal basis, like people that you trusted sending your patients to and all that stuff. I'm just curious because, as I'm starting to do that stuff, I'm getting things like left and right. And I'm just curious about how people like kind of made their choices and stuff. And I would love to hear that journey for them.
awesome. All right, guys. So that's gonna do it for this episode. And then we haven't practiced this at all, so it's gonna be on here on the first episode. Naomi, every time I'm always gonna say Naomi, sign us out because you get the last word. So Naomi, sign us out.
Peace out, guys. Can't wait for the next episode with Little Dente.
And really quick, you have to say this is the making of Lil
No.
Dente. Yeah. So do it again. All right, guys. All right, guys. This is gonna do it for this episode. Naomi, sign us out.
All right, guys. Peace out. This is the making of Little Dente.